you're thinking, do you think that's you?
Creativity starts to come back in as that thinking time comes back in.
I've heard people talk about there's a consciousness area that people can draw from. That's why people get similar ideas. There's a book called, I think it was The Untethered Soul.
Almost most people think about our problems and solutions.
I am 8% more intelligent when I put them on.
I think it's really taken off.
Questionable. What does that put you? What does that put you up to as a total percentage figure?
9. Inspiration Nation, hello. Lee Kemp here for another week on the podcast. As always, with Ryan Boniface and Jose Noya. How are we this week, guys?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good, thank you, Lee. With the new look, Lee.
Very professional there, Joe. I like it. You sounded like you were on like 1980s radio there.
I don't even know. I can't remember what 90s, 80s radio was like. I don't know.
Yes, you can.
I don't think I listen to the radio.
Yes, you can.
Podcaster do. Everyone out there in the nation, we thank you for listening, downloading. We're across all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Just search for Jose Noya and you'll see a few beautiful faces and Joe all on the screen for you. Check us out on social media at Listen to IN, Listen TOIN. So, Joe, it is your topic this week. The first show of our 4th year of podcasting. So what have you got for us?
God, I love that. I love that setup. That was lovely. Brilliant. First of all, I'd like to comment on your new look.
Thanks. I mean, my new look being that I'm wearing glasses, it's not transformational or anything.
So well done, Ryan, for getting Lee to get some glasses.
So you're like this, guys. Obviously, it's been a topic for a long time about my squinty eyes and everything. So I went to a well-known high street opticians that I better have gone to, or I should have gone to. I've even got the catchphrase wrong and ruined that. Anyway, my last checkup for glasses before this one, you can have a tolerance of 1 either way, but whoever gets the closest years wins. So how many years do you think it's been since I last had my eyes checked? Ryan?
7. Oh.
Joe's gone for 7.
How many years has it been, or how old were you? Sorry.
Either or. How many years has it been? Let's go for how many years has it been?
20.
15. 1-5.
Oh.
No way. That is crazy.
2007.
Wow.
I was
that's
12.
Amazing.
I was 12 years old.
15. Blimey. That's crazy. That's so funny. Oh, Lee.
It's been even longer than that for the dentist, but that's a different subject. So, speaking of subjects, Joe, what are we talking about this week?
I was going to pick up on that.
See how I transitioned there quickly without allowing any room for conversation.
You did. You just totally blasted me out there. So this week, I'm talking about thinking. I've got a few things on this.
I'm glad I've got my glasses on now. It feels like a glasses conversation.
Yeah, what did you say you were? You felt a little bit more what? You said it'd give a percentage about how you felt.
Oh yeah, I am 8% more intelligent when I put them on.
I think it's when you take them off.
Questionable. What does that put you? What does that put you up to as a total percentage figure?
9.
9. Yeah.
I'm definitely going to clip that. Anyway, so thinking. I've got 2 elements to this. One is, can we stop thinking? And the other element, is thinking doing? Is thinking an action? So I've got 2 elements. So my own view is that I think thinking is an action. Now, a lot of people would argue that it isn't. It's just you're just thinking what you're doing. I think it's proportional ideas. But the other thing I wanted to examine was, can we look at how, when we're thinking, can we project outside and actually look at the thinker? And a thinker could be anything you're talking about. So actually right now, am I thinking about anything? So I'm going to ask you two, what are you actually thinking about right now, you two? So Lee, what are you thinking about right now? What is actually in your mind right now?
I'm thinking Joe's about to ask me, what am I thinking about? What am I thinking about? Quick, think of something funny to say. And then Joe asked me the question and I've ran out of time.
I really like that.
I was there. And just before that, I was thinking of, I suppose, some follow-up to what you're saying. So, my view on said subject in parallel to listening to what you're saying.
Yeah, And it's like interesting to say that you were thinking about what you were going to say, and actually sometimes we just go off track and think, but is it something we do? Ryan, what about you?
What am I thinking?
You're off camera, do you know that?
Yeah, no. I was thinking, why does it hurt so much to put contact lenses in my eyes? But I know that would really wind up Lee, so I didn't say.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
What am I? I'm thinking. What's my answer going to be? I was thinking about the subject, kind of. You know, is thinking doing something? I don't think it is personally, but you know, we can get onto that in a bit, I guess. I'm thinking, how am I going to get out of this?
I'll save you. Here comes a parachute. And I don't think it's obviously a subset of thinking, Joe, but I think I was digesting. It's the same thing like if you're in a meeting and someone's presenting something to you, or you're watching, particularly watching documentaries or learning. Like I did a course last week, like quite a 2-day intensive course, involved a lot of listening, but I think a lot of it is digesting. So I'm not kind of thinking independent to what's going on. I'm taking it in and cataloguing it in my brain, or whatever other metaphor you want to use for it, kind of on the subject at the same time. And for my tuppence worth, I think, and I'm going to sit in the middle of you two, I think thinking can be doing. I think absolutely it can be doing, and it's an important part of the process of doing anything. You've got to have that initial bit of thinking time. I know some people who used to put planning or thinking time in their diaries to make sure they had time to reflect on stuff. We've talked many probably podcasts ago about how when things get very full on, I get less creative, and then when I have nothing to do, so to speak, I'm just doing mundane tasks for a day, that creativity starts to come back in as that thinking time comes back in. So I think it can be doing. Similarly, I think there's overthinking, as in, you've got an idea of something to do, you've got a plan of action, but you don't really do it, and then you question yourself about the plan, and then you redo the same plan in your head, and suddenly it's 6 months later and you've not really done anything with it. So I think you've gone past that's an extreme example, but you've gone past the point where it's useful. So, and that's where I say it can be, but it isn't always. If you never get off that point, you haven't done anything.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And this is why, because thinking is, like you said, I did a course. It's a course, it's actually a project I was on. We did exactly the same. We have to have reflection time to reflect on what you're going to do, what the plans, what would be a best way to engage certain things. But the most important thing off the back of that was coming up with an action plan that you would action off the back of that reflection time, which reduces the actions. And I suppose the thing is I want to talk about is about thinking and the energy we use when we think. And also, do you think you are the thinker? And that's a bit of a weird question, but do you think you are the thinker?
Can you expand on the question?
Yeah, so when you're thinking, do you think that's you? Or do can you look at that voice or those thoughts and think, is that you? Or is it you? Can you observe it and, almost detach yourself from it, I suppose? Have you ever tried that?
I guess there's not like that. No, I guess there's instinctive thinking. So relay back to one of our favorite books, The Chimp Paradox. Sometimes your chimp is thinking, sometimes it's instinctive actions telling you to do something rather than necessarily your conscious or your level-headed self or whatever that is. And I don't know that I necessarily observe it, but I can be aware of it, but I've never kind of stepped out of it in that way. Is this something you've done then?
Yeah, the reason I've done this is there's a book called, I think it was The Untethered Soul, and it had this really interesting experiment that, when you are talking in your head, it's almost like a voice in it, but that thinker, we can be associated with it, but you can actually disassociate. So you can actually watch what you're thinking and that you're not the thinker. And I thought it was a really interesting concept that actually, how do we identify ourselves? Do we identify ourselves by the thinking process? If I'm thinking, is that me, or can I observe that? And I suppose, because when we think, we can think of negative and positive things, and we can get trapped in that cycle, like you said, the Chimp paradox, you know, where we get all that emotional things. But can we separate from that? And I think when we talked about meditating and stuff like that, and it's one thing I wanted to bring it to the fore, because through my journey, going through what I've been going through at the minute, sometimes I struggle to watch the thinker. And I know logically that you can do this, but it's quite difficult. I find it quite difficult to separate myself from that. Almost like the chatterbox and the voice in your head we've talked about before. But it's an experiment I want to try in terms of, can we be aware of what we're thinking to make sure that it's aligning with what we want to do, rather than thinking, you know, if we're feeling, depending on our feelings of what we're doing, can we change that and think in a way that's going to help us, rather than think in ways that are going to maybe not be quite as healthy for us that we would think. Like you said, Lee, we could overthink certain things. And I was definitely guilty of that. When I got into training and stuff like that, I'd worry so much that I'd overthink of every what ifs and whatever, that I would really be paralyzed by it. Like you said, you'd just be overthinking it. And that's why I wanted to ask whether you think you are, your identity is in your mind, I suppose, and whether you can actually disassociate and actually observe that, and so you can have healthier, I suppose, a healthier balance as to what your thinking is, and whether you can get a different perspective to help you in terms of not getting overthinking, I suppose, but also having the other end of the coin, like you said, about, you know, if you're just going to react to something and just do it, can we find that balance? And I suppose that's the sort of discussion I want to have. And I just want to throw out with you. And I know for me, in meditation, I still find it quite difficult, because I find there's thoughts going on, but I'm still associating myself with the thoughts rather than observing them. And I'm getting better at it. It's still tricky. And I want to sort of get your thoughts on that. And because our thoughts and thinking create our reality. So yeah, I just want to get your view on that, and whether it's something that you knew instinctively, or is it something that you think, oh, okay, this is something that I might try and just sort of to observe, to see what comes out of it, really.
I'd give it a go, I think, in the same way I did with the meditation thing, which I've not done again. I did like it, but I'm not sure it's that time doing nothing thing. But back on track with this. I guess I'd interpret it in my brain differently. I see that as a framing device for something that you said there, to be a little bit NLP. And I wouldn't, for me, I don't know that I suppose I am. I'm reflecting on myself. You said it on observing. I think I like the idea of giving myself a framework, especially like you said, is this in line with what I want to be, my principles, the job I'm trying to get done, whatever it is to know before I start doing the plan or thinking or whatever, what that objective is, what the framework is, what track I need to be on, and then almost sense checking myself. Am I keeping to those principles, or it's not really rules, is it? But, you know, am I keeping to those things for myself? Am I being true to myself in it, or am I letting instinct run off? So we're probably talking about the same thing. I think I'd sit it in my brain slightly differently, like that, almost like my terms of engagement for this line of thinking.
Yeah, like that. But
there's
you,
some real similarities,
Go on.
especially principles that go across everything, but then it'd be a bit specific. You know, if I'm doing a bit of work and I'm doing it for this person and I know I want this, am I keeping on track with this, or am I going off course and need to steer myself back on again? Something like that.
Yeah, because it seems to me that your thinking is like the doing, like really quite action based. It sounds like to me.
Yeah, I mean, you'll go back and listen to podcasts age ago where I don't think I was so much that way, and I'm still certainly less so in work. Certainly in my personal life and a little bit of work, I can procrastinate and I have to push myself to be idea action, but I'm a lot more idea action than I was 3 years ago.
Yeah. I like idea action. I love a classic. I was going to say something then, it's gone. But the thinking thing for me is, can we actually stop thinking? Can we stop thinking? I've tried to, do you know, every time I try and stop thinking, like to meditate, I still think of something. You know, any of you guys tried that? Ryan, Lee, can you ever stop thinking? I don't know. I just want to try and stop thinking, but is that possible?
what I want to say is no, because you've got your stream of consciousness, and if you're not thinking or absorbing or anything else and what's going on, but then to counter that, I've got another example of something I want to give later in case I forget, and I'm just saying that to reach in my head. Have you ever driven somewhere? You got in your car after work, you drove home, you get out of the car, you get in the house, and suddenly you think, I can't remember a single second of that drive home. I just went into autopilot and I've got no point of reference. I can't remember a thing. Where you can't even remember what you were thinking. And were you so in autopilot that you were just, is that a time that we switch off, but we're not aware of it because you can't consciously know you're switched off because you have to be thinking about it. Yeah, I certainly know I've had those sort of things where I've just got no memory of something whatsoever, particularly things like driving a route I always do where it's very robotic.
So can I ask a question? Where do we think we go? Where do we think we go? I'm getting a bit deeper in this. When that happens, like if we can't remember what happens, like is that because we like? I'm getting a bit weird, not weird, but like a bit out there with this. But does that mean we're not existing if we're not?
This is like if a tree had fallen in the woods and there's no one to hear it, sort of thing. Because if you're not thinking and your brain's off,
does you exist? Did you exist at that moment?
The things you were doing happened, and the effect they have on other people happen, even if it's just being a car in front of someone, and all of that is real. But and I'm not answering it because I don't know. It's an interesting thought because there is that bit of if you're not aware of it, then did it happen to you?
Just because you don't remember something, it doesn't mean it didn't happen, does it? Just because you have no conscious memory of what happened doesn't mean it didn't happen. I mean, it's just more that there was nothing notable for you to remember on that journey home, that your brain has let it leave your early consciousness. I don't think we can get, I don't know, but maybe I'm too logical, but I don't think you can get into the whole, if we don't remember something or if we don't think about something, then are we here? Well, of course we are. You don't disappear and come back. Life doesn't work that way. But maybe that's the really logical maybe that's really logical from me, I guess.
And that's what I was going to say. I said, here comes the cold hard logic, but that doesn't mean I disagree.
Because
it's a bit, whereas yours is a bit more theoretical, I suppose, Joe, on consciousness and body, and are they the same thing or are they separate?
Yeah, because I want to see whether we can separate that, and I've tried. It's like, are we? Does that mean we're so embodied in the thinker? They called it the thinker in his book. They called it the thinker, that we can't. We struggle to separate ourselves and identify ourselves with something that we may not be great for us, because sometimes you have these thoughts and stuff like that aren't healthy. That that's not us. I mean, I've had tough times, and I've had some thoughts that have been really quite dark and difficult, and especially in depression, obviously stuff that I'm going through now. And I'm thinking, you are thinking it, but does that, because you're thinking it, is that you? And should you feel like guilty or sad? Because I'm quite a feeling person about having those thoughts. Because it's where those thoughts come from. Where do they come from? Is it us, or where did that actually really come from? I know I'm going a bit deep on this, but this is why I want to say, can we stop it? And, where does it actually come from? What, we might be thinking about random things we might not better remember, because it's like Ryan said, that it's just not of anything, nothing noteworthy. But when we have ideas or when we have a thought, where does that actually come from? And is there any control over that? Can we disassociate something? Definitely meditations help me focus on it, but even then I'm still getting thoughts. But where is all this coming from? Is it? I don't know. And this is why I wanted to open the box up, really, and just sort of try and expand. And before you say, I'm not been on anything, just but where have we? Where does it all come from? Because all ideas come from somewhere. Where do they come from? There's talk about that. There's a central thing that the ideas come from. I'm a bit interested, because are we just these people that think individually, or is there a more wider consciousness that we draw from? Because I've heard people talk about there's a consciousness area that people can draw from. That's why people get similar ideas. And when people talk about downloading, and I'm just thinking right now about is this something that we can really control, or is it that you know, we have to be conscious about what we are thinking, what we absorb, and can we observe that and change it to our benefit, I suppose. So that's what I'm really thinking about. Because also what we think and thoughts generate thoughts and feelings and ultimately actions that drive us, right? But we have the choice to choose that action or not that action. Or, you know, when we have a thought, should we feel guilty? Should we feel upset? Should we feel happy because we have a certain thought? I don't know. This is what I'm just throwing out there to you guys. I'm just, I suppose, a bit of an experiment to think, to be more conscious about, can we stop it? Can we stop thinking, to help give us a little bit of, like we said last week about mindfulness and space, I suppose, because a lot of my anxiety and things come from thinking too much, but I'm definitely a lot better now through the meditation. Definitely got much more control, but I'm probably going to try to go a little bit deeper now into how can I suppose, manipulate that thinking so it's not me, but to use it to my advantage to create a better reality, I suppose, for myself. And this is what I'm trying to explore, I suppose. Anything come out of that for you guys?
That was a lot.
Yeah, I think for me,
it was good. It was good. Not saying it's not, but
no.
I think for me, most things I think about are, or most things most people think about, are problems and solutions. So I have a problem, whether that's I want to go on holiday but can't afford it, or it's something more immediate. Oh, I've got this big thing I have to sort out for work tomorrow, or whatever. You think of the problems and then you think, how can I solve that problem? And you ask where those thoughts come from. Experience, an understanding of breaking down what the problem is. I mean, I feel like as humans, that's kind of what we've always done. Had problems and you solved them, right? But even if you go to the granular detail of back when we were cavemen, it was like, oh, we have no food. You know, that wild version of whatever a cow was millions of years ago looks attractive to eat. So how do I eat that? You know, it's just problems and solutions. That's all it is. That's how I see it anyway. There are some things that it won't always be that, but for the vast majority of things on a particular level, it will just be problems and solutions. That's all. To me, that's all thinking is.
Layer in something else, which is entertainment, because there is that still as well.
But that's still a problem and a solution. How do I get my entertainment fill? I'll do this. That fills that entertainment bucket, whatever pint glass, whatever you want, you know. Like you fill the dopamine levels up in yourself. That's the problem. How do I feel like, oh, I'm bored. How do I solve being bored? Oh, I'll do something for fun. Like that's to me, yourself, yeah. If you as a really granular level, that's problem solution.
Where do you sit, Joe? Because you gave us a lot of the theory of it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. Where do you lean at the moment on it in terms of your view?
Because I go to think, yeah, when we have a problem, we're really focused. We want to solve the problem. But I'm thinking there are times when we don't have problems, right? There are times when we sit back and we've got problems, but they may not be pressing. What happens in those times? Where do these things come from? I suppose, where does that
come back to the bit Ryan was saying, which I do agree with, that not having anything to do then becomes a problem. You solve it by
doing something.
Doing something, or doing a hobby.
But do we have to do anything? Do we have to have that? Is there any control around that? But where does that actually come from? Like, I'm sitting there doing nothing. Is there a problem? Does that have to be? Do we define as a problem? Is the thought that we define as a problem? Does it have to be a problem? It may be that we can, where does that? Where do we define it as a problem?
I think you're taking the word problem too literally. Issue solution, situation solution, whatever you want. It could be anything. Idea solution. I think maybe you're taking the word problem maybe a little bit, maybe too literally, but I think even if it's, I've got nothing to do, what can I do? That's the situation. You solve it by doing something. I'm hungry, you solve it by doing something. Thirsty, you solve it by doing something. To me, that on a really granular level, that's all our brain function kind of is. Obviously, there's more to it than that. There's kind of daydreaming and thinking about other things in the future and the past and things like that. But for the most part, on a really granular level, it is to me just situation solution, problem solution, issue solution.
Well, I love that. You said something that triggered something in mine. Daydreaming. I why do we daydream? Where does that come? Where did that execute from? Like, where does that come from? This is what I'm trying. Like, where does that even come from? That's like, for me, like, with daydreams, so we might be thinking of something that's awesome. Like, I don't know. Do you know what? I don't think if I had a daydream. I can't think of the last daydream. But has anyone like daydreamed here for a while? I don't know if I have. I used to do it a lot as a child. In fact, when I go back, actually triggered something in me, right? And when I go back to my primary school days, in my school reports, it said Joe is a daydreamer. He dreams a lot. I like stare out the window. And what do we do in those moments? Where our conscious is somewhere else doing something, but we're not actually, like, we created that reality. And that for me is like a really interesting concept about why did I start to daydream? What creates it? Where is it actually all coming from? And I know at a practical level, we solve problems and that, but I'm trying to talk about sort of like, where does that even come from? And and the cow idea. Oh, it's like a good cow. I'm going to eat that. Where does that idea come from? We come up. I know we survived and had to eat and stuff like that. But where did those ideas come from? Where people invent stuff, where people say we can do this with that. How do they ever discover it? How do they get the idea that we could do these types of things? And I suppose it might be where our ideas generated, beyond the scope of just logical thinking. Is there something behind that generates that? Because sometimes you're thinking, does anyone, you had that time when you've had a problem, like Ryan said, you haven't got the solution, and suddenly you'll just solve it. It will just come to you. There'll be something that comes to you. And where does that come from? I mean,
your brain subconsciously finally solving the problem.
Yeah, where does that, but how does it grab that? Is it working in something? I don't know. This is just what I'm really interested about, how we can get more into that and more control on that, and whether we're more conscious of it. I just really find that fascinating, in terms of what can we do with that? Because like I think I said it before on the podcast, I had a computer going, I was having this problem, and it just came to me. But like you said, it's the back burner. And in fact, Lee, your book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, that you recommended, actually talks about the back burner, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's a key thing I rely on is it's that, sometimes you can't solve a problem. The best thing to do is walk away and let it just, whatever part in the back of your brain is ticking over, just let it keep ticking over and then revisit it later down the line.
I suppose, but we don't really consciously think of that. That is something that's unconscious, isn't it?
So,
or is it?
And it depends what you mean by don't think about it. I'm not thinking about the problem being solved in the back of my head because it's been pushed back, but I am conscious of the mechanism to do it. It is a conscious decision to let it percolate.
But then what happens there? What happens right there at the back of your mind that we're not aware of, that things that could influence us and then provide that? And can we tap into like no thinking so we can allow that to happen almost like on a conscious level? Because we have that, we go away, don't we? We might be doing distracted by coffee, but can we, I suppose, meditate or do something that, rather than being distracted by something else? I suppose that's put in the back burner, but can we get control over that? And I suppose that's what I'm trying to think about.
I think that might, I think there's a possibility that could enhance it.
Yeah. And I'm just really fascinated by the whole concept of we are in our heads, right? We got this brain in our heads, and we are dictated by what is in there, what we're thinking about. And that is what I wanted to explore today in terms of, especially daydreaming. I haven't daydreamed for ages, and Ryan, that really triggered me. I'm like, why am I not daydreaming as much? I'm very more practical. I've got older, I've become more practical, and I've seemed to have lost that. I suppose being a young child, daydreams, dreaming about what you could do, and then as we've got older and older, we tend to lose that. I don't know for you guys as children, were you daydreamers? I know I dreamed, but I've seemed to have lost it as I've got older. I just seem to have, it's like I've lost it. It doesn't happen. I tend to be much more practical. So yes, I'm a bit worried. I'm not worried. I'm a bit. It's a bit sad that we lose that. And I don't know if you guys ever thought about that. Did you have sort of daydreaming stuff when you were kids at all like that? Did you have anything like that where you just sort of like you would daydream about stuff?
No,
I suppose.
No, but I don't.
You're always practical.
I also don't think you lose. I don't think you've lost it. I think it's just you're now a lot busier than you were then, and therefore you have less time to do it. You have more responsibilities, more things on. Maybe in 10 years' time, when all your kids have moved out, Joe, and you're looking at retirement or whatever, and you're looking for hobbies, maybe daydreaming can become one of them again. You know.
Do you know what I do? I used to do it a lot. I used to really enjoy it actually, and I think it's all the hopes and dreams and the things that you go through. And I think, but I used to get really super creative when I was younger. Like, not that I'm not creative now, but I think there's a lot of creation going on. Or sometimes the creation was not great, but some of the creation was great.
So that's it. Was probably a bit more whimsical and less practical. And then as the practicalities of life set in, you probably still do it. It's just a lot more based in reality now than it used to be. So it doesn't feel the same. Yeah,
but based in reality, right? That's the thing. Like, it's that whole reality thing. We create that reality. It's just strange, isn't it? But we what is like we think, oh, should it be more real? You know. In fact,
so this is, and I think I was going to say, Joe, so there's an NLP thing on this, and I've talked about this before, but it describes, and I really like this for me. It describes your mind as being a map, and everything you experience and do, or happens to you, or you observe, adds to that map. It creates new directions and new avenues, and when something happens, it drops into that map and goes through the best logical path. But it's always evolving based on, you know, something really bad might have happened to you in a certain situation, and your map then consciously avoids that situation, or something might have been really good in a situation and you lean towards it, and it builds up your instinctive responses. And like you said, can you, and I think that, and this is, I talk about NLP, I think you can observe is a different framing word, but you can understand your map. And once you understand your map, you can manipulate your map. You can change it. You know, if you know what those trigger points are, you can change where it goes to give yourself better outcomes, to not avoid bad situations, etc., etc. And again, it's a different kind of wraparound on it, but that is feels like a similar sort of thing to me. And where you say, the reason for saying this back to you, or where do these things come from? I think it's partly instinctive, but then learned behavior, more learned behavior, and that starts to build up your map that generates your thoughts, or back to what Ryan was saying, it generates your solutions to your problems, which are your thoughts. And so I do think you can harness it and you can control it, but you've got to be aware of it, and you've got to find whatever that framing device is that makes that something tangible you can hold on to. And for me, that map is a really good one. I really like that.
So going back to the question then, right at the beginning, do you think you are the thinker then? Are you the thinker? Do you identify with it? Or do you think you can not be the thinker and not be dictated by the way you think?
Can both things be true?
I'd agree with that question, because that's the way I was going to go.
Because I think it's like if you reference it to being like a muscle, you are that is what you are, but you can train it and you can develop it and you can harness it. So I do think you are, but then I think you can make yourself better, for want of a better word.
Sometimes your brain wins and sometimes logic wins, right? Or sometimes the right thing wins. So for me, it's
what do you think? What do you think of that, Joe? And what's your view on said question as well?
Yeah, I don't believe I am the thinker. I am not what I think. I am not my thoughts, because sometimes I can have thoughts which aren't great, and some of the thoughts. So I like to think I'm having them, but they're not. So I can choose which the thoughts are. That's what I'm really being conscious about. And like you said, Lee and Ryan, you can choose the ones that serve you. So it probably goes back to that map thing. But I still, and I know we go through this, we talk about NLP thing about different sections, but where does that all, it comes on based on your realities and what you've chosen and stuff like that. But how is that generated? And you know, are we more than just our brains, I suppose? Is there something more that we're just not aware of yet? That's why we get these types of thoughts. And, you know, where we have or coincidences, are they coincidences? I suppose it's getting a bit out there and not so logical. But yeah, I just think I'm not the thinker, and I think that's really helped me when I've got through my depression, that I'm not what I think, because those thoughts are really quite terrible. And obviously, right now, going through what I've been going through recently, it's really helped. So almost like disassociating from that thinking has helped me to sort of choose the things that I need to be thinking about that help me through.
And it's part of how you said, Joe, it's part of how you shape your reality, isn't it? So I think it's a good view on it. It's a good countdown time is up, so I'm going to wrap us up, guys. But I think this is a
go on.
really good thought experiment, Joe. And I like these sort of shows. So it's very interesting. I'd love to hear people's thoughts out there, what they think of the show. Twitter at listen to IN, listen TOIN. Leave us your thoughts. Head over to inspirationnation.org.uk, all things to do with the podcast, coaching service, the archive. Again, this week there are people trawling through. We really appreciate it. Joe is modeling there his Inspiration Nation hoodie. We have mugs here as well. Mug shot for the camera if I can get it in from my background. All over there. And of course, we thank everyone for listening. Continue to do it. Tell friends, tell family, leave us review. Word of mouth is how we are growing, and we appreciate it. And all that is left for me to do is count us down, and we will see you all next week. 3, 2, 1. Inspiration Nation.
Inspiration Nation.
Catch you
Guys, later.
I want to know now, what's your biggest takeaway? Don't forget to hashtag it with Inspiration Nation in the comments below, and make sure you commit to action. Thank you for checking it out. So don't forget to catch all our other Inspiration Nation podcast episodes right over here. So go check them out. And also, don't forget to subscribe, because that will tell you when your next video goes live by you hitting that amazing bell. So until next time, it's Inspiration Nation, and I'll see you right over there.